Have you ever wondered what would happen if a major food shortage hit worldwide? Some foods are more at risk of disappearing than others, and understanding why can prepare you for the unexpected. From those that rely on delicate growing conditions to others dependent on fragile supply chains, certain foods could vanish from store shelves almost overnight. Stick around as we reveal the top 10 foods most likely to go first in a food scarcity crisis, and what makes them so vulnerable. Don't miss this crucial insight into the future of our food systems. Number 1. Avocados. Avocados are more than just a trendy toast topping or a recipe staple for your guacamole. They're also one of the most delicate and labor-intensive fruits to produce, making them extremely vulnerable to supply shortages. But why, you ask? Well, for starters, avocados are unique in how they grow and ripen. Unlike most fruits, these green gems don't ripen on the tree. Instead, they're harvested when mature and ripen afterward while they make their way through the supply chain. This means precision is key. Harvesting too early or too late can ruin the fruit, and careful handling along the way is absolutely vital. Now here's the kicker. Keeping avocados fresh until they hit your plate requires cold storage and expert logistics. A hiccup in transportation or delays along the way and we're looking at massive spoilage. But that's just scratching the surface of the challenges. Avocado farming relies heavily on human labor. Machines can't do the harvesting here. Each avocado is hand-picked to avoid bruising and damage, which not only increases the production time, but also makes the process expensive. Labor strikes or shortages in avocado-producing countries like Mexico, one of the largest exporters globally, can wreak havoc on the supply, instantly driving up prices. On top of that, these little green powerhouses are picky about where they grow. Avocados need a very specific climate to thrive. Think mild temperatures, plenty of humidity, and well-draining soil. Only a few places on Earth can check all those boxes, such as central Mexico, parts of California, Chile, and Peru. Because their growing regions are so limited, they're extremely vulnerable to environmental shifts like unexpected frosts, storms, or changes in rainfall. One freak weather event could lead to disastrous yields, leaving grocery shelves bare and prices soaring. Add all these challenges together, and it's easy to see why avocados earn their spot as number 1 on our list of foods most likely to disappear in the next big food shortage. 2. Bananas. Bananas might be one of your favorite fruits, but did you know they're on the front line of vulnerability in the next potential food shortage? These humble tropical fruits are currently facing a variety of threats that could make them disappear faster than you think. One of the biggest issues is their heavy reliance on stable tropical climates to grow. Bananas thrive in warm temperatures with consistent rainfall, but as global warming intensifies, these necessary conditions are becoming harder to maintain. Heat waves, droughts, and unpredictable weather patterns caused by climate change are directly impacting banana production, reducing their yield and quality year after year. For many regions like Central America, Southeast Asia, and parts of Africa, where bananas play a dual role as a dietary staple and a key export, any disruption to banana farming spells danger. Millions of people depend on them for both food security and income. The problem is made even worse by the fact that the banana industry relies almost entirely on one variety, the Cavendish banana. End of section 9. This single strain of banana was chosen for its resistance to certain diseases and its ability to endure long shipping times. But this uniformity has come at a cost. With no genetic diversity, the Cavendish is highly susceptible to devastating new diseases. A prime example is the notorious black sigatoka disease, a fungal infection that destroys banana leaves, crippling the plant's ability to produce fruit. Black sigatoka thrives in warm, humid conditions, exactly the climate bananas need, and spreads rapidly, leaving trails of destruction across plantations. Fighting this disease requires constant applications of fungicides, which increase farming costs and have harmful environmental consequences. On top of that, banana farming isn't just a climate and disease issue, it's an economic time bomb. For countries that depend on banana exports to support their economy, any small disruption can lead to catastrophic consequences. Any break in the supply chain, whether it's a storm, a transportation failure, or even labor shortages, can cause massive spoilage, as bananas are highly perishable and need strict storage conditions to stay fresh. With prices fluctuating in global markets and the need for specialized shipping, producers and consumers alike are caught in a perfect storm of uncertainty. Finally, there's the environmental cost of bananas. Mass production often involves clearing large swaths of tropical rainforest, leading to deforestation, loss of biodiversity, and long-term soil degradation. This unsustainable farming practice further reduces the planet's ability to grow bananas in the future, creating a cycle of loss. Number 3. Potatoes. Potatoes are one of the world's most beloved and versatile foods, but they are surprisingly vulnerable in times of crisis. These humble tubers, a staple crop in many countries, are at high risk due to their unique agricultural requirements and challenges in production. Unlike grains such as wheat or rice, potatoes are propagated vegetatively, meaning that farmers plant parts of existing potatoes, called seed potatoes, instead of traditional seeds. While this method ensures consistent crops, it comes at a significant cost. It creates crops with limited genetic diversity, leaving them more susceptible to devastating diseases and pests. One major threat that endangers potato production is the rise of aggressive pests such as the potato cyst nematode. These microscopic parasites can survive in the soil for years, attacking potato roots and reducing yields drastically. What's worse, these pests are incredibly resilient, resisting many conventional treatments, making them exceptionally difficult to manage. Once infected, entire fields can become unusable for years, which is a nightmare scenario for farmers. The challenges don't end there. Potatoes are labor-intensive to grow and harvest, especially for fresh market varieties that require careful handling to avoid bruising. However, global labor shortages in agriculture are hitting potato farms hard. Without enough hands to help during peak harvesting seasons, tons of potatoes are left uncollected, contributing to food supply chain disruption. While mechanization is an option, it's not ideal for fresh potatoes, since machines often damage their delicate exterior, reducing their quality and shelf life. Storage is another major hurdle. Potatoes must be kept in cool, dark, and well-ventilated conditions to prevent sprouting and spoilage. This requires costly and energy-intensive facilities, especially in warmer regions where natural cooling isn't an option. Any mishap, such as power outages or equipment malfunctions, can lead to massive post-harvest losses in storage facilities. With so many factors working against this essential staple, it's clear why potatoes are among the first foods at risk during a food shortage. If these issues aren't addressed, we may be looking at empty shelves where bags of potatoes once sat. Don't take this beloved food for granted. Its place in our diets might not be as secure as it seems. Number 4. Grapes and wine. When it comes to food shortages, grapes, particularly those used in winemaking, might vanish faster than you think. Grapes are incredibly sensitive to the environment. They need a very specific combination of factors like temperature, soil conditions, and seasonal consistency to thrive and produce the high-quality wine we all love. Even minor climate changes, like unexpected heat waves or late frosts, can wreak havoc on vineyards. These shifts disrupt the delicate balance of sunlight, rain, and nutrients that grapefruits need to create the perfect mix of sugars and acids for premium wine. Picture this. If the temperatures skyrocket, grapes ripen too quickly. This creates a problem because sugary, overripe grapes lead to wines that lack the proper acidity and balance. That's not all. Many vineyards rely on consistent moisture levels for their grapevines to grow healthily. Yes, grapevines are somewhat drought-resistant, but prolonged dryness can shrink grape sizes, lower yields, and give winemakers much less fruit to work with. Regions such as California and southern Europe are feeling the pinch as water shortages become more common. Some farmers have switched to water-seeking systems like drip irrigation, but droughts continue to make their lives a lot harder. If that wasn't challenging enough, pests and diseases like powdery mildew and botrytis have found a cozy home in these shifting climates. These nasty culprits flourish in warm, wet conditions and can destroy entire vineyards in no time. While many winemakers lean on fungicides to fight back, this can result in long-term damage to the soil and nearby ecosystems. And let's not forget changing grape harvest schedules. With rising global temperatures, grapes tend to ripen earlier every year, forcing vineyards to scramble and harvest ahead of normal schedules. This creates logistical nightmares, like labor shortages during peak picking times, and can push production costs through the roof. Even after the grapes are harvested, the challenges don't stop. Grapes are fragile and require cold shipping to stay fresh, and logistical hiccups like transportation delays, extreme weather events, or lack of labor can ruin entire shipments. For winemakers, this means spoiled fruit and serious risks to wine quality. With so many challenges stacking up, grapes and wine might be among the first luxuries lost during future food shortages. Number 5. Peanuts. Peanuts might be small, but they're one of the trickiest crops to grow, and for good reason. Unlike most plants, peanuts have a quirky and demanding growth process. They start flowering above ground. But here's the twist. They actually grow their pods underground. To pull this off, peanuts require loose, sandy soils to allow their pods to stretch and mature properly. But that's not all. Farmers must ensure the soil stays well drained at all times, as even the tiniest hint of waterlogging can cause rot and destroy the crop. This makes peanuts incredibly picky about where they can be grown, limiting them to specific agricultural regions that meet all these requirements. The challenges don't stop there. Peanuts have a long growing season that can go up to 5 whole months. That means they're exposed to a variety of environmental threats for an extended period. Warm, frost-free weather is non-negotiable for peanuts, and a surprise cold snap can devastate an entire harvest. Add to that soil-borne diseases and pests like root knot nematodes, and you've got a farmer's nightmare. These pests can wreak havoc on peanut plants, and while crop rotation and pest management strategies help, they're no silver bullet. Farmers often face an uphill battle with every growing season. Harvesting peanuts is another massive hurdle that often requires both time and money. Since the pods grow underground, harvesting involves pulling the plants up, drying them, and then separating the peanuts from the plants. This process either calls for expensive, specialized machinery or labor-intensive manual work. Both options are costly, and delays in harvest, whether due to labor shortages or equipment failure, can lead to spoilage or a loss in quality. Finally, peanuts don't just face physical challenges, they're deeply tied to international trade and market dynamics. Price fluctuations caused by tariffs, export restrictions, or changes in trade policies can shake up the entire global peanut market. One shift in policies from major players like the United States or China, and prices worldwide can skyrocket. It's no wonder peanuts are one of the first foods at risk of disappearing during a food shortage. Number 6, soybeans. Soybeans might just be one of the most versatile crops on the planet, but they're also one of the most vulnerable in the face of a growing global food crisis. Whether you know it or not, soybeans play an enormous role in our daily lives. They're used in everything from food products like tofu and soy milk to animal feed and even biofuels. But despite their importance, soybeans face a mountain of challenges that could wipe them off shelves during the next major food shortage. First off, soybeans are a staple in animal feed, which means they're heavily tied to the world's growing appetite for meat. As global meat consumption skyrockets, the demand for soybeans has soared right along with it, putting immense pressure on farmers, many of whom are based in soybean powerhouses like the United States, Brazil, and Argentina. These countries dominate global soybean exports, so anything that disrupts production in these regions, like sudden weather changes, political instability, or labor shortages, can send shockwaves through the global market. And believe me, it doesn't take much to create chaos in supply chains. Speaking of chaos, there's a major environmental cost to meeting the world's demand for soybeans, and that's deforestation. Take the Amazon rainforest, for example. Every year, huge areas are cleared to grow soybeans, destroying habitats, releasing tons of carbon into the atmosphere, and pushing countless species closer to extinction. Plus, mounting international pressure to restrict this deforestation could mean limits on production in critical areas like Brazil. And when production drops, prices rise and soybeans become harder to come by. But environmental issues don't stop there. Soybeans are incredibly nutrient hungry. Over time, their intense farming can deplete soils, meaning farmers have to rely on expensive fertilizers. And with fertilizer prices soaring due to energy costs and supply chain issues, farming soybeans is becoming a costly challenge. Add unpredictable weather patterns caused by climate change, droughts, floods, and shifting temperatures to the mix, and it's clear that the future of soybean farming is anything but stable. Another problem? Pests and diseases. Warmer temperatures are allowing new pests and crop diseases to emerge, and they've been hitting soybean farmers hard. At the same time, there's growing consumer demand for non-GMO or organic soybeans, which are much trickier and more expensive to grow. Now, plus, they can't even be stored or processed alongside GMO crops, making them even harder to manage. Number 7. Chickpeas. Chickpeas, also known as garbanzo beans, are a powerhouse in global agriculture, valued for both their exceptional nutritional qualities and culinary versatility. These little legumes pack a punch when it comes to high protein and fiber content, making them a staple in many plant-based diets. Whether as the key ingredient in hummus, a hearty addition to soups, or ground into flour for gluten-free recipes, chickpeas have become a global favorite. But despite their growing popularity, chickpeas might not always be so readily available, and they're at significant risk of disappearing during a major food shortage. One of the incredible things about chickpeas is their natural ability to fix nitrogen in the soil, enhancing its fertility for future crops. This makes them a critical part of sustainable farming practices and crop rotation, especially in regions where soil quality is a concern. However, they're not as tough as they might seem when it comes to environmental stress. Chickpeas are highly sensitive to drought and high temperatures, and they need consistent water supply during key growth phases, such as flowering and seed development. For farmers in areas with erratic rainfall or water scarcity, this spells trouble, as poor water access can severely limit their cultivation unless costly irrigation systems are implemented. To make matters worse, most of the world's chickpea supply comes from just a few key regions, including India, Australia, and Turkey. These areas are already grappling with climate challenges, ranging from unpredictable monsoons in India to extreme weather events in Australia. A single bad season in one of these regions could trigger an immediate shortage, raising prices globally and leading to limited availability in both local and international markets. And it's not just the climate that's the problem. Chickpeas are also vulnerable to destructive diseases such as Ascochyta blight, which thrives in humid conditions and can wipe out entire crops if left untreated. Managing these threats requires careful farming techniques that can be difficult for smaller or resource-limited operations. At the same time, consumer demand for chickpeas is at an all-time high. The rise of plant-based diets, the popularity of hummus, and the push for organic, non-GMO varieties have put an enormous strain on production. Since organic farming often yields lower outputs, the pressure to meet this growing demand becomes even greater. With the world's changing climate, water crises, and mounting demand for this sought-after crop, chickpeas are now under threat. If production issues continue, they could easily be one of the first foods to disappear during the next global food shortage. Will this creamy, protein-packed legume remain a pantry staple, or will it fade into scarcity? Only time will tell. Number 8. Fish and seafood. Let's talk about fish and seafood. An essential part of diets worldwide, but also one of the most vulnerable food categories in the event of a major food shortage. Why? It all comes down to the delicate balance of our oceans, where wild fish populations and aquaculture industries face a storm of challenges. One critical problem is the growing demand for fish meal and fish oil, which are made from small wild-caught fish like anchovies and sardines. These fish might not land on your dinner plate, but they are a crucial part of the ecosystem, feeding larger fish and marine animals. Instead, they're being harvested in huge numbers to produce feed for aquaculture, fish farming, livestock, and even pet food. This not only depletes wild fish populations but disrupts the entire ocean food web. Aquaculture, while a solution to dwindling natural fish stocks, isn't without its own problems. Fish farms pack large numbers of fish into controlled environments, which may sound efficient but actually creates the perfect breeding ground for diseases and parasites. When farmed fish escape into wild waters, these problems can spread to natural populations, further endangering marine ecosystems. As you sadly are well aware, manure is a nasty pollutant and is currently drinking water from the sea. The chemicals and antibiotics used to manage such outbreaks often pollute nearby waters, harming biodiversity and even contributing to antibiotic resistance. And that's only part of the picture, because now climate change is making things worse. Rising ocean temperatures and acidification make it harder than ever to maintain stable conditions for both wild and farmed fish. Warmer waters lead to harmful algae blooms, which suffocate fish or release toxins that turn aquaculture operations into disaster zones. Events like massive fish kills are becoming more common, especially in coastal fish farms. Environmental changes are also throwing off fish spawning cycles. For example, salmon, which need cold, clean rivers to spawn, are losing their habitats as temperatures rise and pollution worsens. Migratory fish are now being forced to travel to new, often unexpected regions in search of suitable conditions. This not only disrupts traditional fishing patterns but directly impacts communities that depend on them. And here's the catch. Global trade complicates things even further. The seafood industry depends heavily on long international supply chains. Any disruptions, like port closures, customs delays, or rising fuel costs, can lead to severe shortages and sky-high prices in your local fish markets. When those global networks falter, seafood might just disappear from our plates quicker than you think. Number 9. Lentils. If you're stocking up for the next food shortage, lentils might not be as safe a bet as you'd think. These tiny, versatile legumes are known for being one of the most efficient, sustainable crops out there. They're not just highly nutritious, They also play a critical role in agriculture by fixing nitrogen in the soil, which enriches it for future crops, while reducing the need for synthetic fertilizers. However, despite their agricultural superpowers, lentils face some major challenges that could put them at the top of the list of foods in jeopardy. One of the biggest hurdles for lentil production is their need for stability over a relatively long growing season, up to 110 days. Lentils are highly sensitive to changes in temperature and moisture. A sudden late frost, unexpected heat wave, or even slight temperature fluctuations during this critical time can negatively impact their growth, leading to smaller yields and lower quality harvests. And with climate change causing increasingly unpredictable weather patterns, this challenge has only become more pressing. Late frosts, unseasonal rain, and heat waves are no longer flukes, they're increasingly the norm. For such a picky crop, an unpredictable climate spells disaster for farmers. But wait, there's more. Lentils need well-drained soil to grow properly. Heavy rains and waterlogged soils can cause root rot and other diseases, sometimes wiping out entire sections of a lentil crop. Regions that once enjoyed predictable rainfall patterns now see erratic weather that makes water management a constant struggle. Meanwhile, mechanized harvesting seems like the obvious solution, right? Not so fast. Lentils, thanks to their small, delicate structure, are notoriously difficult to harvest with machines. Mechanical harvesting often damages the lentils, causing splits and cracks that lower their market value. To counter this, many farmers stick to manual or semi-mechanized methods, which are labor-intensive and costly, especially in areas experiencing labor shortages or rising wages. All of these factors combined make lentils a surprisingly risky food when it comes to sustainability and availability. While they've been a dependable food source for centuries, these challenges mean they might not be as reliable in the future. Could lentils be one of the first foods to disappear in the next major food shortage? It's definitely possible. Number 10. Poultry. Poultry lands the number 10 spot on our list, and for good reason. While it may be a staple in kitchens around the world, chicken and other poultry products are surprisingly vulnerable to disruptions, especially during a food shortage. You see, raising poultry isn't as simple as it seems. Commercial poultry operations require an enormous amount of energy to create the ideal conditions for birds to thrive. From heating and cooling to ventilation systems, these farms are heavily dependent on stable energy supplies. When energy prices spike or shortages occur, the costs of production soar, which inevitably means higher prices and less availability of meat and eggs for the consumer. But energy isn't poultry's only Achilles heel. Most of the chickens we eat or get eggs from come from a very small pool of highly specialized breeds. These breeds are bred for efficiency, but this comes at a cost: genetic uniformity. Why does this matter? Because if one bird is vulnerable to a disease, there's a good chance the rest of the flock is too. And when you have thousands of birds packed together in close quarters, disease can spread like wildfire, wiping out entire flocks in no time. On top of that, poultry farming demands a significant amount of clean water. Chickens need fresh water to drink and to maintain hygienic living conditions. But in regions battling water scarcity, access to clean water can become severely restricted. Without it, hygiene standards drop, leading to higher risks of infections and poorer quality meat and eggs. If that wasn't enough, there's growing pressure to produce antibiotic-free poultry due to concerns about antibiotic resistance in humans. While this is certainly a step in the right direction for public health, it's a real challenge for producers. Antibiotics have traditionally been used to not only treat infections, but also boost growth. Shifting away from antibiotics means farmers need to ramp up their hygiene practices, introduce expensive alternatives like probiotics or vaccines, and ensure top-notch biosecurity measures. All of these changes drive up costs, making poultry production more expensive and ultimately less accessible.